Should you pull for Balthier's FR and BT? His role is a dispeller and a cleanser. His notable attacks will start with his skill 1 snatch shot. It is 2 to 4 HP attacks with all being 50% splash. It steals 3 buffs from the enemy. It grants 1 level of Way of the Sky Pirate for 8 turns. With that buff, once it hits level 3, it upgrades his skill 1 snatch shot to snatch shot plus, and it also upgrades his skill 2 great aim to great aim plus. And lastly, with snatch shot, you get an extra level of the buff if you're breaking or attacking a broken target. Great aim, his skill 2, it is 2 to 3 HP attacks with 150% splash. It cleanses 3 debuffs from himself. It steals 3 buffs from all enemies, and it also grants 1 level of Way of the Sky Pirate for 8 turns. Finally, with his skill 2, it actually triggers twice if you are breaking or attacking a broken target. Fires of War, his EX, it is 5 AoE HP attacks. It cleanses all debuffs from himself. It steals 3 buffs from all the enemies, and it extends all of his buff durations by 1 turn. Tides of Fate, his LD, it is 6 AoE HP attacks. It cleanses all party debuffs. It steals 3 buffs from all enemies. It grants 3 levels of Way of the Sky Pirate for 8 turns, and it increases both of his skill uses by 1. Weight damage, his FR, it is guaranteed hit. It cleanses all party debuffs. It steals 3 buffs from all enemies. It gives a party HP cap up by 30% whenever you're attacking a target that has no buffs. It is an instant turn rate move. Element of Treachery, his BT, it lasts 6 turns, in which buffs that Balthier steals are granted to the entire party, not just him. It also gives a party HP cap up by 20%, and it gives him his special follow-up attack. Gorgon Shot, his follow-up, it is 4 split HP attacks. It inflicts a Gorgon Shot for 1 turn on all enemies, in which attacks will deal 0 brave damage, and it will also deal 0 HP damage. However, when they're dealing 1 HP damage, it cancels after triggering once, meaning if you're reaching some sort of threshold or a counter attack and Gorgon Shot reduces the HP damage, it wears off there. His force conditions, you're getting a 40% whenever you're attacking a target that has no buffs. You're getting a 20% whenever you're using a ranged ability, and you get an 80% whenever you're dispelling a buff, including off turn. Balthier's pros, and you'll be surprised how many there are. Balthier, with his BT active, has enormous power. Pretty much to the point of DPS level. He can absolutely beat your DPS unit if you have him fully built. He does good damage all around. And moving on to what he does best, which is stealing buffs. If you come across fights where a certain boss gives a buff to themselves that is very broken, for example in the Hell House with one of their buffs, essentially making all HP damage 0. If you're Balthier, you can take that buff and apply that to the entire party, and your party is now invincible. So depending on the boss you're fighting, if they have really good buffs on them that they continually give themselves, Balthier can take that and make your team stronger. Not only that, because his FR isn't specific to him at all, if you bring other dispellers in your party besides Balthier, it's only gonna make him better. You'll be able to utilize that 80% condition more, and you'll be able to raise your numbers that much higher. Not to mention, you're also making it easier to get those HP cap ups, which require the enemy to not have any buffs. If you already have any dispellers in your roster and you're looking for more people to pair them up with, I think Balthier is a great choice. Or if you don't really have any other dispellers, but you have a good amount of breakers in your team, that can also be utilized, because Vanille's EX sphere with the right person in a team with Balthier is going to be tremendous for you. For those people who don't know, Vanille's EX sphere, the way it works is if whenever you break an enemy, it dispels 1 buff from them. If you have a breaker, that's a lot of dispelling that they're going to do. That's a lot of force time percentage for you. I think one breaker in particular that works really, really well with Balthier would be Aranea, and Aranea herself is already broken. When her FR comes out, if you pair up Aranea with Balthier, that's a broken combo. That's just a fun hypothetical I came up with. Point is, you have a lot of opportunities to abuse Vanille's EX sphere with Balthier. And lastly, Gorgon Shot debuff can prevent damage. Gorgon Shot is a pretty nifty debuff. Granted, it's not stackable like with Pain's debuffs, but if you're just looking for some extra protection in your team and you don't necessarily have the luxury of using a god tier tank unit, having that little extra bit of insurance with your team will help. Now that the pros are out of the way, let's get to the cons. His BT effect is short. I hate short BT effects, and it's not any better here. I honestly do not see a problem with him being too broken if his BT effect was 8 turns instead of 6. Why would they nerf him like that? Because first of all, his FR echo is instant turn rate. So if you're planning on building up FR stacks and you want to use him, you're essentially now working with a 4-turn BT effect. That's not enough. And given that most of his damage and the most broken parts of his kit rely on his BT being active, only giving him 6 turns, 4 turns to work with it? Why? Maybe I'm just being pessimistic, you know? From the way I see it, when you have a short BT effect and that BT effect is really, really good, you're limiting the amount of fun that you can have with that unit. I really don't think he's going to be that much more broken if his BT effect was 8 turns. Hell, even if he had 10 turns for a BT effect, I don't think it would be that bad. And you can't even complain to me that, 10 turns will be too long, when you have someone like Neon who does true party fire enchant with their BT effect, have that be 10 turns. Like, which is logic. But I digress. Moving on to his FR, as good as it can be, it's situational. The way Balthier works is he's very, very busted to some types of bosses, but to other types of bosses, he's just unnecessary. If the boss buffs themselves a lot, you can really take advantage of that third condition, which gives 80% of a force time with Balthier on the board. And you're going to reach 999% very, very quickly. And again, if you bring other dispellers on the team, if you use Vanille's EX with breakers, it's going to be very juicy, the numbers. But Balthier is not necessary for every other fight. If you just have more generic attackers in your roster who do just as much damage as Balthier, sometimes even more, there's no point in using him. Some of the buffs he steals might not even be useful. If the boss gives themselves attack up, defense up, and Balthier steals that and applies that to the entire party, you're just wasting space at that point, where depending on who you have in your party, that space could be used for much more useful buffs. But if all Balthier does in the fight is steal generic buffs and applies that to the team and unnecessarily takes up buff slots, you're gonna have trouble with that. And moving on to the party cleansing, I was actually surprised by this when I researched him, but the party cleansing is only restricted to the LD and FR from what I've seen. Given how Balthier operates as a unit, you would think that he would be able to party cleanse at a moment's notice. Actually, no. He can cleanse himself a lot easily, but the other party members, if they get debuffed a lot, your hands might be tied a little bit. It's not the worst thing in the world that party cleansing is only restricted to the LD and FR, because that by itself you can still work with, but still, it's a bit of a downer. And lastly, just the entire shtick. Yeah, okay, sure, you can go ahead and cleanse a lot, but overall, there's really no point in having a unit that can consistently cleanse, where you have units like Aerith who can just prevent debuffs outright. Let's be honest, even though Balthier cleanses a lot, for one turn, the debuffs are still going to be active. So if you're dealing with HP poison, turn rate down, you're still going to feel those effects even though you cleanse them. If you're pulling for Balthier because like, oh, you need someone to cleanse, someone like Aerith is just way better in my opinion. My should you pull rating for Balthier is A. The reason why he's not higher despite how many good things he does bring to the table, he's a situational character. He's not just someone you can use. I mean, he can be someone you can use for every fight if you need it, but the times where he's the absolute best unit to use, it heavily depends on what kind of boss you're fighting. It's just a matter of, do you understand how he works, and does your roster require someone like Balthier? That's my should you pull rating. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.